I'm Sky Cubacub, the creator of Rebirth Garments, a clothing line for queer and trans disabled folks of all sizes and ages. I actually started out as a chainmailer, so when I was 13, I learned how to make chainmail jewelry, and this is what inspired me to get into making clothing. I was making tons of chainmail garments in high school, and my teachers were like, you gotta come up with something to go underneath that chainmail clothing because it is too see-through. So I got into making spandex, and that's what led me to do Rebirth Garments. But chainmail is my first love, and I wanted to share it with you. This kit is brought to you by the Chicago Public Library and Teen Services Department. This kit is part of the Mad Skillz Fall Into Some Kits Grab and Go kit series. So just go to any of the Chicago Public Library branches and go pick yourself up a kit. This is both part of Mad Skillz, but also Radical Fit, which is my queer DIY fashion curriculum that I've been working on for the past year. So welcome to the second year of classes. In your kit, you'll get 2 pairs of Eurotool flat nose pliers. This is made specially for chainmailing. They're flatter but also wider than the typical like needle nose pliers, and they don't have any sort of grip on the inside that would like mar the rings. You'll also get about 300 raw jump rings in aluminum. So jump rings start out as just wire like you would find at a store, but there's usually more special wires that's like specifically jewelry grade. They are wound around a mandrel, which is like a rod, and like just coiled around. So you can see here how they used to be. This is why when they are sawed off, they come slightly open and slightly closed. It's taken off and put onto a wooden rod and cut either using a saw, a machine, or wire cutters. So these are saw cut, which is the best kind you can do because it's like just the most flat and nice, and then you can like really close your rings and make them flush against each other. It does take out a little bit of the metal, which creates the kerf, which is just the little gap. Saw cut rings, yeah, are the best, but they're harder to do they're harder to make yourself just as a person. You can use like a jewelry saw, like a manual one, and do it yourself. Pinch cut rings use wire cutters, and the pros on that are that you could do this yourself at home, and it's very easily accessible and less risky than like using a saw. But the cons are that the rings will be a bit sharp and not line up exactly, and then they'll usually have like burrs on them, have like kind of a point like this. So if they have 2 points, then when they're trying to line up, they have to like overlap, but then there's this like little sharp part. It's important to first learn how to properly open and close the rings before going straight into the weaving. And it's also pretty helpful for like beginners to pre-open some rings and pre-close others, just so that you can have things ready. As you get more advanced, for some weaves you can open and close as you go. I like to put my little bead mat on a tray or a plate. You don't have to. I just like to do this so that I can like grab and go. I have many different ones that are pretty small that I could do in my lap while like I'm being driven places. You can also practice picking up rings on the bead mat. Sometimes you can grab the whole bead mat itself and then dump all the rings, so try not to do that. Just try to gently pick up your rings. And it's great to just get in the habit of mostly not touching the rings with your hands and just picking up with your pliers. And you want to always work on top of the bead mat that we give you, because a lot of times people will try to bring it away from the bead mat and then they will drop it and then they'll scatter everywhere. So you're gonna have your pliers in each of your hands. You're gonna have your thumbs kind of on the top of one side of the pliers. You want your fingers kind of like close to the top. You don't want to be too far away because then it gives you kind of weird leverage. So I am pretty close up to my pliers. I tend to have my dominant hand more straight up and down, like vertical, and my dominant hand horizontal. So then it is a perpendicular angle. So when you are opening rings, you want to take your dominant hand and pull the side that is your dominant hand forward. And it doesn't have to be super wide. A lot of beginners, when they start, they want to open it really wide like this, but then it'll be very hard to close your ring and keep it a circle if it's all the way open like that. And it also like wears on the ring. I'm gonna just close that and put it away. So yeah, go ahead and just open the rings. And you can open like, I don't know, 10. Or if you want to make like a whole necklace, you could even open like a third of your rings. The raw jump ring may or may not be bent in the way that you are like opening it. You want to always have whatever your dominant hand is pulling the dominant side forward, because if you just are like, oh well, I'm left-handed, but this is already opened a little bit more on the right, and you bend it that way, then when you're weaving it with your left hand, it'll be very confusing and harder for you. So yeah, I just focus on whatever is dominant and non-dominant rather than how the rings come. When you open rings, you want them to be open enough so that you can like scoop up other rings pretty easily. If they aren't open enough, like this, like sometimes people will open them really small and then they'll try to scoop the rings and it doesn't work. So yeah, make it big enough so you can scoop up rings. For closing a raw jump ring or a jump ring that's already open, you're going to hold the ring with the kerf upwards again, and you're going to grasp it in the jaws of your pliers in your non-dominant hand. Then with the pliers in your dominant hand, hold the other ring, or other side of the ring. Again, you'll do it at like a 90-degree angle to the other pliers. You're going to hold just like your non-dominant hand steady. So you're going to push inward slightly while bringing the ends together, and you're going to go a little bit past the side of the ring, like basically just one thing, like one piece of wire past it, and then you're going to try to make a click sound like that, and then guide it to match up the ends perfectly. So yeah, I'll just show a couple more in silence so you can hear and look at it. And different metals have different amounts of like spring back. So aluminum springs a little bit more, which is why you have to go like past, because so this is what it looks like if you just bring it to the exact end. Well, if you just bring it to the exact end without pushing in, then there's like a little gap there. So you want to, yeah, make that clicking sound. And then like copper is really soft, and brass is kind of in the between of copper and aluminum. So you can close a little bit more rings than you open to begin with. I wanted to show you kind of the posture that you can have while you're chainmailing. Try to have a straight back. I know I always end up like starting to slouch. So just try to correct yourself, but also like, you know, sometimes that's what happens. Yeah, I just try to keep my pliers and work over the bead mat. I try to take breaks to stretch your hands and your wrists and your shoulders and neck pretty frequently. I have like permanently injured myself a little bit because I used to go way too hard on chainmailing when I was a teenager. I learned when I was 13, and in high school sometimes I would chainmail for 20 hours straight without breaks. Do not do that. Set timers and like really listen to them if you are a person who gets obsessed with things like I am. It just was such a freeing and calming medium for me as a neurodivergent person that I would get really hooked and forget to use the bathroom or eat food because all I wanted to do was chainmail. But yeah, don't be like me and take breaks. It's probably best if you sit in a chair and have a table where the work is kind of higher up, not too low, so that you aren't craning your neck. But also, chainmail is really nice in that it's pretty portable, so I work on it in my bed or in cars or on the train. I actually made a portable chainmailing unit in college so that I could do it while walking. Wild. You don't want to collapse your elbows so that you make your rings what they call Pringle. Your grip with your pliers doesn't have to be as tight as you think, because these kinds of pliers close kind of like a Pac-Man rather than parallel action pliers, which close like up and down. The harder you grip a ring, the more likely you're gonna just like shoot it out of the pliers. So yeah, I have a pretty loose grip. It's just enough to hold on to the ring. Really try not to clench your fingers. And if you are ever like shaking from holding it too tight, you're definitely holding it way too tight. So yeah, just like try to keep it loosey-goosey.
Check out the rest of the Radical Fit playlist on the YOUmediaChicago YouTube channel. We would love to see the projects you are working on, so use the hashtags CPL Radical Fit, YOUmedia, and YOUmediaChicago, and tag us on Instagram and Twitter at YOUmediaChicago. Or find us on our Facebook, YOUmedia at Chicago Public Library.